This LOS is calculate and interpret liquidity and solvency ratios. Okay, in this slide I've put all the ratio categories: activity, liquidity, solvency, profitability, and valuation ratios, just as a reminder, but I highlighted in bold the liquidity and solvency ratios for this LOS. Liquidity ratios measure the ability to meet short-term liabilities, and some of the liquidity ratios are the current ratio, the quick ratio, and the cash ratio. Solvency ratios measure the ability to meet long-term obligations, and the solvency ratios are total debt, debt to capital, debt to equity, financial leverage, interest coverage, and fixed cover charge. Balance sheet ratios, liquidity, and solvency. So here we have the liquidity ratios: current ratio, quick ratio of the asset test, and the cash ratio. And these indicate the ability to meet current liabilities, all three. So the first one, the current ratio, is current assets divided by current liabilities. The quick ratio or asset test is basically current assets minus the inventory, take out the inventory, divided by the current liabilities, or cash plus marketable securities plus receivables divided by current liabilities. And the cash ratio is the cash plus the marketable securities divided by current liabilities. In terms of solvency ratios, we have long-term debt to equity, total debt, and financial leverage. So these solvency ratios measure or indicate financial risk and financial leverage. For the long-term debt to equity, the numerator is total long-term debt, the denominator is total equity. Debt to equity, the numerator total debt, the denominator total equity. Okay, so a little bit of a difference there: long-term debt or total debt. For total debt, it's total debt divided by total assets, so that's important to remember. And for financial leverage, it's total assets divided by total equity. That's a question that is sometimes like to get practiced, financial leverage, but we remember that from the DuPont. Remember our DuPont equation: net income over sales times sales over assets times assets over equity, and this was considered to be the leverage multiplier, assets over equity. So you shouldn't have any problem remembering the financial leverage. It comes from the DuPont. We use it in the DuPont equation as well. Again, the DuPont, it's the return on equity equals net income over sales, sales over assets, assets over equity. We cross out the sales, we cross out the assets. We've got net income over equity, which is the return on equity. This slide, I just want to remind the coverage ratios, which are very closely related to the liquidity and solvency ratios. For the interest coverage ratio, the numerator is EBIT and the denominator is the interest payments. And the fixed charge coverage ratio, this is one that sometimes students often forget. It's the EBIT plus the lease payments, and it's divided by interest payments plus the lease payments. So we just add the lease payments to the numerator and denominator for the fixed charge coverage ratio. A quick practice question to check our understanding. The most stringent test of a company's liquidity is its A, cash ratio, B, quick ratio, or C, current ratio. That should be an easy one. A is correct. The cash ratio determines how much of a company's near-term obligations can be settled with existing amounts of cash and marketable securities. So we're just going to finish this LOS with one last practice question. We have a table here with SAP Group Consolidated Statement of Financial Position, basically the balance sheet from 2008 to 2009. And the question is, using the information beside, the quick ratio for SAP Group at 31st December 2009 is closest to A, 1.01, B, 1.44, or C, 1.54. Okay, the correct answer is B. The quick ratio is cash plus marketable securities plus receivables divided by current liabilities. And so we can see I've highlighted in bold green cash and cash equivalents, 1884, plus other financial assets, 486, plus trade and other receivables, 2546. That's our numerator. We're going to divide that by the denominator of 3416. And I like this question because we have to be careful with our language sometimes, and you can see that they're using the term other financial assets. But given the placement of other financial assets between cash and receivables, it's reasonable to assume that these are highly liquid and probably marketable securities. So in this case, it didn't say marketable securities. It said other financial assets, but its placement was between cash and accounts receivable, so they should be highly liquid, most likely marketable securities. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.